Dr. Shea Bradley-Farrell. Thank you so much for your time.
I'm so glad to be with you, Joaquín. Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to start with the Trump administration. I want to assess the Trump-Rubio foreign policy so far, and what differences both are between the foreign policy and the monetary policy.
Well, just the Trump foreign policy or the Trump-Rubio doctrine for Latin America is going to be so different from decades past of the U.S. administration. We in the United States have really neglected, I believe, our Latin American partners. But Trump and Marco Rubio, our Secretary of State, really believe that the Western Hemisphere is very important, not to just to support our allies, but also for our shared hemispheric defense. With the United States staying out of Latin America, not totally, of course, but not putting a focus on our foreign policy, that has allowed China, Iran, Russia, even terrorists, Hamas, Hezbollah, to come into our hemisphere. And that doesn't make sense. We have a responsibility together to protect our homeland. And I think that's the difference between, people are calling it like the revitalization of the Monroe Doctrine. And I think there are similarities in that we reject other global powers in the hemisphere, but it's different in that we want a mutual, a genuine, fraternal, shared defense, cooperation, economic cooperation as well.
So what would you respond to those in the right that are saying that, giving attention to Argentina, Colombia, Venezuela, that's not America's first policy?
That's a good question. You're exactly right to ask that. I totally disagree with that. This is our hemisphere. So if we allow terrorists, we allow our adversaries to come into this hemisphere and invest, like Iran, China, and Russia, how silly is that? Of course it's America first. And it also meets our very top domestic priorities, which is to close our borders. It is border security. Under the Biden administration, we had somewhere between 10 and 20 million people come across our borders. But we don't know who most of them are. So, of course, a prosperous, law-abiding Latin America is in our interest, because I'm sure the Trump administration has taken a very hard stance against narco-terrorists. We have designated the cartels terrorists, wiping them out, our military attacking them, and Trump has taken a very strong stance on this. But this is directly in our interest. Under the Biden administration, our young people between 18 and 45 years old, fentanyl-related deaths became the number one reason for death, the cause of death of that age group in America. Can you believe that? So Trump is doing something about it. I'm very proud of it.
So I want to talk also about Russia and Ukraine. I think today was the Hungary Prime Minister, Viktor Orban, in the White House. Do you think that alliance, that Trump and alliance, will be like the key in negotiating better than Putin?
Yeah, that's a good question. Maybe, because Trump and Prime Minister Viktor Orban are good friends, and they also share a lot of the same values. And I think that they are a power force together to get things done. I'm encouraged about the nuclear agreement that was just signed with our State Department. I'm encouraged about us investing more in Hungary. We should be strong partners because they are very similar to us and our especially our conservative beliefs. Prime Minister Viktor Orban, since the very beginning of the war, and I would say I myself and my organization have been against this war, because if you really looked at the facts, Ukraine, there's very little chance that Ukraine could win this war, and there's a very great chance that they could be destroyed, which they are. We've lost over 500,000 people. Infrastructure in Ukraine is wiped out, public facilities. I spent last year and the year before, spent quite a lot of time in Central Europe. Can you get the real story there of what's happening? And it's a very sad thing. I've been in a Hungarian refugee center for the Ukrainians. It's not a good situation. If you go and look at your eyes, you see that the war must come to an end.
What do you think is missing so that we can reach that end?
Good question. Joaquin, if we knew that, we would need to go to Washington and talk to Trump. Because I really believed that Putin would negotiate once Trump came into power. I think that he still will. I heard President Trump say that he was confident that he still would do that. He's losing more and more people. He's getting worn down. So quite honestly, I thought that he would do it before now. But at this point, I think we need to pray.
Let's move to your new book.
Okay.
Last Running to the West. I think the obvious question is, what is the Last Running to the West?
Well, I hope it's not the last warning, but especially in my country under the Biden administration, and if you couple that with what's going on in the European Union, the slide into Marxism and Marxist values has been overwhelming. I'm very confident now that President Trump is in office that a lot of this will be turned around. It doesn't mean that we have to stop fighting. In fact, we should keep fighting. The European Union is extremely top-down decision-making process, making the nation states, taking their sovereignty away from them. The Biden administration was very similar to that. In my book, actually, I took the 11 points of communist psychological warfare that were written by our Defense Department back in like 1960. And if you look at all those points today, they describe what's going on in the West. I'll give you one example. One example is that the elite body creates its own propaganda arm to get out their message to the masses. We certainly have that in the United States. In fact, under the Biden administration, they were basically controlling the leftist mainstream media there. The same thing is going on in the European Union. I don't know what your media is like here, but I do know that this is why I'm so glad that there is media like what you're doing. So it's very important.
Thank you. Well, that's the last question. What central idea would you want people to retain after reading?
That we have to be smart, that we have to understand that wokeism comes from birth from Marxism. One example of that is that Marxism, like wokeism, divides people. Communism divided people along class lines. They divided children from their mothers and fathers, people from religion. If you divide people away from these things, you can control them. Today, we have the left dividing us on the basis of race, gender, sexual orientation, elevating one identity over the other. You know, men, biological men competing on women's sports teams, saying that they're women. This is an example of that. These men, their rights have been put over the right of the safety and the scholarships and the competitiveness of these women. So this is an example, and I want people to understand that wokeism or progressivism is not progressive. It's actually retrogressive.